at the end of time.
O'clock.
That was what?
So that looks good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody.
Yep.
If you're in the United States, of course, it's Thanksgiving Eve.
It's Festivus.
It's
Festivus for the rest of us.
right.
Yeah.
We're gonna pig out tomorrow.
Yeah.
Hooray!
Yeah. Got all kinds of food ready to go.
Pigging
Pies
out
and
is
everything.
one of my favorite things.
Yep. Got a pumpkin pie. I made a pumpkin pie. Made a, what do you call it?
I don't know.
Pecan pie.
Pecan pie. Oh.
Yeah, it's in the refrigerator over there. Got stuffing made. Just got to dice up and boil some tomatoes, or potatoes for tomorrow to make mashed potatoes with. And then cook the turkey. Stuff and cook the turkey. Stuffing's done.
Because you got to have the real mashed potatoes.
Yeah. It's cornbread stuffing, too. Made Jiffy cornbread.
Nice.
Yeah. Yep. She's been up here all day working.
Just like Grandma used to.
Yeah. Yeah. I got it. It's ready.
Yeah.
It's going to be good. There's going to be a lot of leftover food.
Well, that's what we like.
We'll be eating that shit for weeks.
I like the leftovers almost as much. Well, no,
Yeah.
maybe slightly more than the actual meal. Although the actual meal is good too.
Put the cranberries in the pot, fresh cranberries, sugar, and just cooked them until they exploded, and then just refrigerate it, and that's how you get your cranberry sauce.
Yummy.
Yeah, it's good.
I'm excited.
Yeah, I got a little bit of spice in it.
Excited about eating all the food and just laying around watching the MST3K Turkey Day Marathon, which I do every year. I usually just leave it playing in the background because I've seen some of the episodes.
I bought those frozen rolls with the dough.
That's all right.
Yeah, those are good. Those are good.
We had those last year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked those.
Yeah.
Oracle said, "Time, I've got a batch of your Moyo pork
Yeah.
reheating in the oven right now."
Yeah, hell yeah.
And Tammy says, "I'm making your Brazilian cream corn again."
Oh, yeah. Thanksgiving. I didn't make it this year.
I know. That's some good shit, though.
I got the...
we made it last year, right?
Yeah.
Didn't you make it last year?
I did that Russian pureed beet dish.
Oh, that's right.
I got that coming.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and green bean casserole. Got that. I got those sweet potatoes too. I could do those.
Yeah, I like the sweet potatoes.
But I want white potatoes too. That's the main thing. We'll just
I love mashed potatoes.
Yeah.
Sweet potatoes are good too, but
Yeah.
Zach says, "Cool makeup, Jen. Thank you very much." Yeah, we're going to Memento Mori is having a special holiday Eve event this evening. They wouldn't normally do the event on Wednesday night, but they like to do it whenever there's a holiday the next day. So we're gonna try and wrap this up in 2 hours so we can leave by 9:30.
That's cool that people are doing the Brazilian cream style corn. That's the best cream style corn.
It's so good.
It's so much better than American cream style.
It's so good.
You make it with real cream.
Yeah, I'm sure it's like a million times more fattening, but oh my
whole
God.
kernels and everything. A lot of butter.
Yeah, it's delicious. But like I said, it's probably
condensed milk.
I don't even want to know how many calories are in that shit, but it's really good. Thursday, Thanksgiving calories, I guess they don't count. That's what we're telling ourselves anyway. And we hardly ate anything today, in preparation. We had a tiny ham sandwich and a handful of lemon cookies.
Yeah.
That's about it. And one drink. This is my first drink. Camp Guy said we buy a whole bone-in turkey breast, not as much waste, 8.5 pounds.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't end up wasting pretty much anything. We eat all of it. Don't you make? I thought you made broth or something like that with the leftovers.
Yeah, no, I make the what do you call it? I cook the trimmings from onions, celery, the turkey neck. My dad loves it. Turkey neck, the liver, the gizzard, and the heart. I make what do you call it? Broth out of it, and then that's the base for my gravy.
Yeah.
I make 2 different gravies. I make a turkey gravy out of the pan drippings, and then I can also blend all that stuff up, the vegetables, and then use that same drippings and then make a vegetable gravy. That's good too. So I have 2 of them. Sometimes I'll put a little bit of gizzard in it, so it has a little. Every now and then you'll hit a little chunk. Yeah, I don't like a whole lot of that
chunks.
liver though.
Yeah, it does kind of overwhelm the flavor, but it's nice to have a little bit of it in there.
I like to cook it in the broth.
Yeah.
The whole thing, but I don't like to cut it up and then make it in the gravy. I used to like it, but I got sick of it.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
I like the gizzard in it though. It's just kind of chewy.
Chewy.
Yeah.
Oracle said, we're being a bit weird for Thanksgiving. I'm making lion's head meatballs with Napa cabbage and rice. Okay, hey.
Tammy said that cream style corn was a big hit last year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see how anybody could not like that.
Brazilian cream style corn.
It's so good. It's just like ridiculously
North
good.
America's got some fucking lessons to learn.
I could drink a gallon of that easily.
Yeah.
Just all on its own. It's so yummy.
Make me want to make some. I think I got the stuff to make.
Well, I mean, if you
We
want
have
to,
so
I'm
much
not
fucking
going to
food,
stop
though.
you. I know.
Got so much fucking food.
That's the thing. It's like we make so much food. It's like, hey, it's Thanksgiving, and then it's like, oh my god, 3 weeks later we're still eating.
We're still eating some of it. We eat most of it in the first few days. Yeah.
It's a lot. Zach says, I'm also super excited for tonight's topic. I think it's so fascinating. Yeah, I mean, and this is just going to be, I don't know, just kind of like a wide-ranging casual discussion about this, because I like this a lot, too. I'm not like an expert by any means about analog horror, and I haven't even, seen the whole, like, all of the, like, a lot of the big series and everything. I've watched some of them, but not, like, all of them. But I don't know. I think this would be kind of like a fun discussion just because I like the whole aesthetic of it and I like the whole idea behind it. If you haven't seen it and if you're really into analog horror, there's an awesome documentary and it's on YouTube and I think it's just called The History of Analog Horror. And it's like 3 hours long and it's super, super in depth. And like they talk to a lot of the creators and they talk to like Nexpo, like the guy that does Nexpo and all that kind of stuff. And it's really, really good. Like they go really in depth into a lot of stuff, and it's like I've watched it a couple of times at this point, but it's pretty thorough and like pretty exhaustive. So, Zach says, "Did I ever check out any of Librarian's videos? By the way, I didn't get a chance to, but I definitely will going forward because, like I said, there's so much content out there. That's the thing about analog horror, and I feel like, particularly people in the online horror community, analog horror." It's hilarious to me how these youth today, but the youths, but they're always just kind of like, man, analog horror. Oh, it came out way back in 2016, which it wasn't that long ago. I mean, that's not way back. I'm like, if you're talking about way back, I'm talking about like way back.
90s.
Yeah,
80s.
That's way back, sure.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of like saying way back in 2016, and it's like at this point, I feel like a lot of horror creators think that analog horror has become oversaturated and has become stale, which I get, but I don't think that's the thing. I kind of feel like analog horror at this point, it's kind of its own subgenre, or actually I think I would call it a subgenre because it's almost like a subgenre of found footage, which is in itself a subgenre of horror. You know what I'm saying? So I kind of feel like just like any other subgenre, like for example, a slasher movie or something like that, it's like, yeah, there'll be one that comes out and it's like a big huge hit and then everybody rips it off and that happens for a few years. Everybody gets fucking sick of it and then everybody's like, oh my god, I don't ever want to see another slasher movie ever again. But then like a few years go by and then like somebody kind of reinvents and like injects some new life into it. And I think that's probably what will end up happening with analog horror because I really do like the aesthetic behind it. I like the idea behind it. I like the idea behind online horror in general because it's so collaborative and because there's like a low, and they said this on the documentary, there's like a really low barrier to entry, particularly as far as analog horror goes, because it uses so much footage that already exists, like public domain footage, like old TV broadcasts and things like that, and like cutting them up and remixing them like in different ways.
It's like the vaporwave of
horror.
horror.
I was gonna say that it's like actually really related to the whole onset because it all kind of happened at once, where the whole vaporwave thing came. It got really popular, and and analog horror got really popular, and then that whole aesthetic, which I think that the 80s looking aesthetic, which if you watch New Retrowave or something, that 80s look, it has a name. It's called Outrun, but there's also one that's kind of more 90s centered, and I think that's just called aesthetic, except it's got like a bunch of spaces in it. So it's that, but it's like that all kind of like worked in tandem. And I think it sort of came about because a lot of people that make analog horror content, like series and stuff, are young. Like a lot of the big ones in the genre were made by like teenagers. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, they have time.
Well, yeah, that's one thing.
And fucking things, and things are new to them, so everything's exciting.
Right.
Oh, we're going to make this. Me and Jen could sit around and look at that old footage and not see anything in it.
Well, it's like we saw it the first time around.
Yeah.
But I think the thing about it is that what they were saying on the documentary, and I think there might be something to this. It's like kids that grew up, that didn't live through the 80s and 90s, that didn't live through the analog era. It could be that they are so oversaturated or overstimulated by imagery, memes and everything is just like out there in their faces all the time, that they kind of want to harken back to like the old days when everything was like kind of slower and
more simple.
And simpler and stuff. Like that's kind of a relief for them. So that might be why there's just this big resurgence in younger people being into old shit, like stuff from like the 80s, like the whole aesthetic of I mean, look how popular fucking Stranger Things was. With a younger demographic, even though it was set in the 1980s, and like they wouldn't have lived through that like we did. But
somebody invented a word for it, but I don't remember what it was. It was the fact that young people were having feelings of nostalgia for a time in which they did not live.
Yeah, there's a word for that. I think it's a German word, but I know what you're talking about, but I can't think of it offhand. Somebody in the comments might know what it is. But I just heard somebody say it today, but
what's funny is that it kind of works on us old people too. I see this stuff and it feels nostalgic to me. Like Vaporwave, which is a good music. They would play it as the background music for Dead Mall videos and shit.
Yeah.
For you old people who don't know what fucking Vaporwave is, it's recycled music. You're like, what? Well, think about it. If you want to make a song, why make a new song when there's so many old forgotten songs that you can modify? Songs that were just like Muzak tracks and just forgotten shit from the 80s and the 90s that just totally forgotten and unused. Well, you could take a clip and slow it way down and just repeat it over and over again and just butcher a song up and just break it down to its very rudimentary feelings, and make a song out of it. A good example would be like Macintosh. The most epic Vaporwave song is by a band, I think it's called Macintosh Plus. Or it's not a band, it's just a creator. Macintosh Plus. And they just took some old kind of like R&B, Muzak B-level song, and slowed it down and just repeated the same like 3 or 4 lines over and over again, and then just it's quite cool. Vaporwave is what's a good way to put it? It has a feeling to it.
Yeah, it's a vibe for sure.
And they purposely make it sound like you're listening to it off of a tape, and that there's something wrong with the tape.
Or that it's like, or you're hearing it from like off in the distance.
Or you're hearing it off in the distance in a cheap mono speaker at the store.
Right.
Like a music.
So it reminds you, people our age, it kind of reminds you of being a kid and being in the mall with your mom picking out bras or whatever.
Cheap ass music.
And hearing this like music like coming through over the store speakers.
Yeah. So you've never heard, if you're an older person, you never heard Vaporwave, check it out. It's on YouTube.
And like I said, I kind of feel like the whole Vaporwave thing like went along with the whole analog horror thing. You know what I mean? Because it's basically taking basically taking old forgotten stuff. Like I said, they use Muzak, they use like old commercial jingles, they use like old action movie soundtracks like from the 80s and stuff like that, and just kind of like remix them and do different like things to them. And analog horror is pretty much the same thing. A lot of it now, some creators do make their own stuff, like make their own things and make it look old. But a lot of them do use a lot of like public domain type of footage, like old training films and things like that.
Commercials from a long time ago.
And putting them together, but making it like sinister.
Yeah, nobody's gonna sue you because you're not making any money off this.
Yeah, and that's another thing too.
It's all forgotten shit. The companies that made the shit are long gone.
I love too that people will spend years and years of their lives doing these series, and a lot of them don't really get anything out of it. They just want to do it. They post them on YouTube for free. People watch them. People talk about them. Every now and then, like Zach mentioned, the kid that did the Backrooms one, the main one, he didn't invent the Backrooms, but he was the one that made the most popular series about it. He's getting a deal with A24, like they're making a film adaptation of that. And the same thing happened with, one of the big ones in the genre, which isn't quite analog horror. It has analog horror elements, but it's kind of more an ARG, which was Marble Hornets. And they actually did make that into a movie later on, which I saw, and it was not great. But you know what I mean.
Jenny, you look real cute with those glasses and that club makeup out here. Do you guys think that looks cute? She was going like, I don't think it looked good with the bangs.
Well, no, I just thought that because you told me before that when I had my bangs down and I had the round glasses on, you said that looks crazy. Like
No,
put
you've
the
done
put
photo
the
shoot-
small.
I showed you. You've done photo shoots.
I know, but
it
so
must
I
have
was
just
just like,
been the
oh,
way. It must have been the outfit that you had on or something.
maybe it was, or maybe my hair didn't look as
Didn't
good,
look
or
as
maybe
cool
it was
that
dirty
day.
or something.
I think it's a really cool look for you.
Maybe.
the blackened out eyes and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This
you
is
look
the
goth as
second
fuck.
time I did eyes. Like I did it one time, and then I tried to put on the false lashes,
Yeah.
and the glue got in my eyeball, and it just all of it
Yeah.
ran. So I had to take everything
She's
off
wearing
and
a
start
really
all
cute
over.
outfit too, Jay. You got to stand up and show them that outfit.
No, let's
No,
not. Let's not do
it's
that.
fucking- it's
Let's
cute.
not do that.
One leg sticks out of it, and it's got all, the leg goes through like a little holster looking thing, and
Yeah, it's like a little
booty.
holster thing
Yeah,
on
it's
the
all
side.
booty. It's cute. I'm
Yeah.
gonna get the porn cam down. Fucking.
He's gonna get the porn cam
Get the
down.
porn cam down. Fucking
Oh my
show it to
God.
her. Just
Oh,
stand
yeah.
up. Stand up. Show
Do I
them
have
out.
to?
It's cool.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, this is a cute outfit.
He's always making me stand.
We're going to the club.
Okay, hold on. Let me.
Again.
Oh, it's like all stuck up in
Oh, no.
my.
Back up. Go over here.
Stuck up in my ass crack. Because I'm classy
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Shit's up in my stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Show them the boots, Jeff.
Yeah, this is my little velvety boots. How far back I gotta
Yeah,
go?
now you got to lift them. Just lift your leg. There you go.
Yeah, see?
Yeah.
All
Okay,
right.
the cute little boots. That was a cute outfit. I bought that outfit for her.
Yeah. I haven't worn this out yet.
Uh-uh.
This is. I've had it for a while, but
Have
I
you
haven't
little
worn
silver
it yet.
bracelets or anything?
No, I don't have. Well, I
Okay.
have a couple little ones,
Okay.
but I might get
You have
yeah.
to see what they look like.
Oracle knew the word that we were talking about. Anamoya.
Anamoya.
That's the name of it. Like,
Okay.
yeah, nostalgia for stuff that you never experienced.
Does anybody know the name of that Vaporwave song by Macintosh Plus that I'm thinking about? It goes, baby, come on. Da-da-da-da-da-da. And I can't, I don't even know what the name of that song was. I don't even know the original song.
Right.
It's just some kind of R&B jingle, and they slowed it way down, and it sounds like it's playing out of a damn mono speaker at the mall.
Yeah. I'm kind of.
It's
into that.
addictive. Listen
Like
to
I
it.
said, it really kind of gives you a
Yeah.
certain feeling, which is
Yeah.
what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
It's supposed to evoke that. Which, in the same way that analog horror is supposed to evoke
Yeah.
the feeling of you in your room in the dark
Yeah.
when you were a kid in the middle of the night, and like some weird shit came on the TV and you weren't sure what it
Yeah.
was. You know what I mean? They were trying
Yeah.
to like get that across.
They also did a Billy Idol one, and all it is Billy Idol going, and I spend so much time. That's it. You know, from fucking Eyes Without a Face. Just that. I spent so much time. That's it.
Yeah.
And it goes on, and Eyes Without a Face is kind of in there. It's mixed in with a couple of other Muzak songs.
Yeah.
Weird.
Thank you very much, Bryce. That is awesome of you. Happy Thanksgiving. Love the show as always. Thank you very much. We always do.
Thank you, Bryce, all the way from New Zealand.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, Zach said that. I think the first time I heard about vaporwave stuff was Dan Bell's videos.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he uses it a lot in his stuff. Well, all the Dead Mall
Not as much
videos.
anymore.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it kind of, like I said, became sort of saturated because
Yeah.
everyone was doing that.
Yeah.
But his editing is also
Kind of vaporwave.
of all the Dead
Yeah.
Mall videos, like his video, he always like finds these weird ass fucking old commercials. Like he used like those Psychic Friends commercials with Dionne Warwick, and
Yeah.
he found this really old weird Blockbuster employee training video, and he
Yeah.
like uses pieces of that. It's just like fucking crazy shit. And he like just the way he edits them in like old talk shows and stuff, like daytime talk shows, and the way he edits them is like super funny. But yeah. So, before we get too much into the topic, like I said, this is gonna be just kind of a wide-ranging. Me and Tom watched. I mean, I watched the documentary. I watched a bunch of stuff about it today, like a bunch of documentaries about it. Last night together, we watched. There was like an hour and a half Iceberg, which was basically talking about kind of the best known analog horror series. And, you know, obviously went from it's an iceberg, so they went from, like, the best-known ones, like, down to the more obscure ones. So they kind of talked about that a little bit. So that was kind of fun. Because I just wanted Tom to get... Because I wasn't sure how familiar he was with...
I had never heard of it.
Right, so I just kind of wanted to give him, like, a little bit of a primer, like an idea.
Yeah. But some of the little cases that they talked about go way back. I remember them, like the fake Max Headroom video
Yeah.
where they busted in on a real television signal. That's old. That was kind of before the horror thing, but I guess it is on the same.
Yeah, it's usually cited as kind of like a precursor, because here's the thing, and I liked they explained this really well in the documentary. They said technically that's not analog horror, because analog horror is just made to mimic something that looked like from that era. Whereas
that was
from that era.
Yeah.
So like by the same token, something like a found footage movie from the Blair Witch Project, that is also not considered. It's considered like a prototype, but it's not considered analog horror because it was made in the analog era. Same with Ghostwatch, the very famous. Sort of, it's not really found footage, I don't think. I'd call it's kind of like a mockumentary or like a mock live broadcast. But it has a lot of the same shit that you would see in analog horror. To be analog horror, it has to be replicating that. It can't be from that actual era. You know what I mean? It's trying to evoke the feeling of that, but not be from that actual era. You get it?
What's funny is these kids, they missed 90s internet.
Yeah.
90s internet was like that. It did have that feel. The internet was a mysterious place, man, in 96, 97. Even up to early 2000s, it was like, you never quite were sure what you were going to see. And they had weird-ass fucking sites like Gore Gallery, and they had, what do they call them, discussion groups back then.
Yeah.
And billboards and shit. It was just, the internet was just done differently. It was more crude, but it was fun. It was the Wild West. Weren't as many people on it either.
Right.
You know, it was like you were getting away with something.
And like I said, I kind of think that that's what a lot of people that are analog horror creators, they're trying to evoke that time period in the 80s and 90s when you weren't really sure if what you were seeing was real or like what the context of it was. Like now I kind of feel like everyone is just like oversaturated with information and you can find out anything you want to know like pretty much in seconds. But back then you didn't really have that.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you'd be watching TV at 3 a.m. or something because you had insomnia, and you saw some weird fucking shit on there, and just like, what the fuck was that all about? Like, and there'd be no way of finding out.
Yeah.
So I think that they're trying to, and even like the guy that did Local 58, which we'll talk about in a minute, Chris Straub, I think his name is. He was, I was watching like an interview with him, and he said the idea for Local 58 came from when he was a kid. He's younger than us, but he still remembered, you know, analog stuff. Like he's not that much younger than us. And he said that where he grew up, there was this local channel, and it's like they showed weird, like you know those film strips that they used to show in classrooms like in the 70s and stuff that were like moral dilemmas. And then like it would end.
Wash your hands and all kinds of shit.
Well, yeah, but these were like moral dilemmas. Like, what would you do? And then then it just kind of stops like before some bad shit happens, and then you're supposed to turn off the projector and like ask the class like what they would do. But he's like, I was a little kid and I just saw these on the TV without any context. So it's just kind of like there's these kids getting into these horrible situations, and then it just ends, and you never find out what happened to them. Right. And it's just like, so seeing that as a kid and not knowing what it was, he's like, obviously I know now what they were, but it's like back then I didn't. So he's like, so I was trying to evoke that same feeling that I got as a kid watching those and not knowing what they were. So I think that he put that like really well, the way he was like explaining that. All right, so like I said, before we get too much into it, it's just going to be a whole all over the place. If you guys have any series that you would suggest, like I said, I haven't seen a lot of them, but I have seen bits and pieces of like kind of the big ones and stuff like that. But if you have any that you think are really good, like let me know and I'll watch them and we can talk about that. But before we do that, we got to do our little advertiser affiliate kind of thing. And this actually kind of fits in really well because on the off chance that you wanted to start your own analog horror project, obviously you'd probably need to know how to do video editing for one thing, and maybe graphic design and some other creative things like that. And if you don't know how to do those things, then maybe you could go and subscribe to our sponsor Skillshare, who are this online repository, thousands and thousands of different classes of various creative things, including video editing, graphic design, productivity, figure painting, whatever it is you want to do in a creative thing. They have a class for it, and they have classes geared toward everybody from the beginner to the expert, and they are all taught by trained professionals. So if you click my link down in the description box, they are doing their Black Friday Cyber Monday deal until November 30th, and if you click the link down there, you actually get 50% off a monthly or an annual subscription. Full disclosure, obviously, if you click on that link, we get a small commission if you sign up for Skillshare. But please click the link, get 50% off, take some classes, make your own analog horror stuff. It'll be really cool. So yeah. Now, as we mentioned before, so analog horror would be defined as pretty much any, and there's been films, like feature films, like Skinamarink or Broadcast Signal Intrusion, ones like that kind of toy with that aesthetic, but it's largely an online phenomenon, almost entirely web series, usually on YouTube. And as I mentioned, it doesn't really count as analog horror if it was like footage from that time. If you just found some, a random videotape at a garage sale and just like uploaded it, that's not necessarily analog horror because it is analog. It came from that time period. The whole point is you're trying to take that footage and mix it into a story that is trying to replicate something from that era, but is not necessarily from that era, although pieces of it could be from that era. Does that make any sense? Okay. So yeah. Now, there have been kind of precursors, and I like that the documentary that I watched, they actually went so far as to go all the way back to the very famous Orson Welles' War of the Worlds broadcast. Not saying that's analog horror, obviously, but kind of citing as an early example of what they would later call unfiction, which is basically, it's kind of overlaps with creepypasta in the sense that you're telling a story or you're making a narrative online, but you're in universe, you're trying to make people believe that it's real. You know what I mean? Like it's not supposed to be presented as fiction. It's supposed to be presented as this is really happening. And analog horror is kind of a subset of that. So as an early example of unfiction, they cited War of the Worlds, the Orson Welles broadcast of War of the Worlds, because the way that it was presented, they were clearly trying to make it seem as though it was a real radio broadcast. And that happened, back in the 1930s, right? So this isn't a new concept by any stretch of the imagination. It was just kind of the internet that made it, really explode. Another example that they cited, which is obviously not analog horror, but had it was probably a big inspiration on the analog genre, was the David Cronenberg movie Videodrome. Because if you think about it, the whole premise behind Videodrome is that this guy comes across a pirate broadcast or a channel that has all of this kind of torture and porn and shit like that on it, and then it turns out that watching it gives you a virus, it has a physical effect on your body, and that is a very, very analog horror trope. It would become one later on. So I'm not saying that David Cronenberg invented the fucking genre, but if you watch Videodrome, that has a lot of the shit that would turn up later on.
They riffed off of Videodrome,
right?
Maybe unconsciously though. Maybe.
Yeah.
The chances of them seeing that, well, though, it's just in the zeitgeist.
Yeah, sure. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Because there's other things too. Like I said, and I mentioned Ghost Watch before, which is from 1992, which I did. I actually did a video about that on my other channel, Scare Salon. But if you don't know, that was broadcast on British TV on Halloween night of 1992, and it was presented as though it was a real live broadcast of a poltergeist investigation. They were investigating, a poltergeist infestation based loosely on the Enfield case. And over the course of the live broadcast, more shit, scarier shit started happening, and then all the real people, and they even used real newscasters and shit like that, from that era.
Yeah.
To make it seem to give it some verisimilitude. And if you haven't seen Ghost Watch, please watch it, because you will be astounded at how ahead of its time it was. It's so immersive. And it really, until it goes kind of crazy at the end, But it's like up until it's totally believable. So believable, in fact, that the story goes, when they first aired it in 1992, a whole bunch of people thought it was real and started calling the BBC and were freaking the fuck out. Because they were like, they built it up really nice.
Yeah.
And it's like I said, these were all real newscasters. They looked like they were really doing that. Yeah, it's Halloween and we're here investigating this silly poltergeist thing. Isn't this funny? And they were like having a good time. And then scarier and scarier shit started happening. They're like, uh-oh. Like, and they even had like people calling in to the show and saying, oh my God, weird shit is happening at my house too. And like so it was like kind of becoming like nationwide. It was a fucking brilliant concept.
Kind of like my dad and that damn mermaid fucking documentary.
That thing that was on Discovery.
You saw that shit on Discovery. Yeah, you know them mermaids, that's real, man. What? I was flabbergasted. He believed it though. They had doctors and everything. Scientists. I went and watched it. I looked it up. It was made for Monster Week or something.
Yeah.
He didn't know though. He thought it was real. And look, saw the doctors, and I said, Dad, all those doctors, man, he's like that woman. He goes, that's an actress. He said,
yeah.
I thought she was kind of good looking to be a doctor.
I mean, the thing about it, I guess if you didn't grow up, and we're older, you know, obviously we're Gen X, but we kind of grew up on both sides of the divide. You know, we grew up like half in the analog world and half in the digital world. So we kind of grew up with the digital. So we were kind of like there at the inception. Yeah. And I feel like if you grew up, if you were, you know, the generations prior to us, if you didn't grow up in that environment, it doesn't really hit the same. They don't really seem to get it as much.
I got fooled too, though. He gave me a book. This is before I joined the Army. I was living in Mississippi. He gave me a book. You're going to like this book, man. This is some weird shit. It's called Eaters of the Dead. It's about these Vikings. This Arab guy goes hang out with these Vikings, and they fight these guys, and it's old, from way back. It's the stories from way back, and they fight these Neanderthals. And he goes, yeah, they believe it's a Neanderthal. So I read it, and I was like, yeah, that's probably what they're talking about. But that whole book was fiction. It was just made, and they based the movie 13th Warrior on it.
Yeah,
with Antonio Banderas. It was not a bad movie. I liked that movie actually. It departs from the book quite a bit, but in certain areas. But Eaters of the Dead it's given to you as if it was somebody telling you about a historical document that they found to set all this.
Right.
And I didn't have any context. I just thought it was telling me the truth. I thought it was a scientific document talking about this old story that they found. Kind of like the way Dracula was originally written, probably supposed to be read back in the day. Dracula is supposed to be written almost kind of like found footage.
Yeah, it's like the literary equivalent of found footage because it's all letters and diaries and stuff like that, and newspaper articles. And it's presented like it's like a real. Yeah. So like I said, it's nothing.
Eaters of the Dead's kind of like that too.
It's nothing new. Right. So I kind of feel like a lot of time, but I think it's harder to detect from back in the day because you're not real cognizant of how savvy people were back then about it's like kind of determining like whether a thing was fact or fiction. Like maybe everybody knew, well obviously everybody knew Dracula was fiction, but I'm just saying that, you know, something like that was presented as being factual, would people have necessarily been like, oh, like they knew what that was? Like, you know, now like everybody knows the Blair Witch Project isn't a real documentary.
Yeah, like you can't believe those old 1800s newspapers.
No, not at all.
About airships and UFOs.
They just made shit up.
They made shit up.
They were just trying to sell papers.
Yeah, that they...
Like I said, it's no different. It's no different.
That they were digging a train tunnel and found dinosaurs in there. You know, living dinosaurs. That was another one. Yeah, I believed that.
I think we did a show.
For a while, until Jen uncovered this Freudian fucking... What's it called? Fortean archaeology.
Named after that fort guy.
Yeah. Yeah, he was using all that. They're just making things up to fucking... To back up the Bible is why they were doing it, really.
Yeah, it was like a creationist kind of shit. Yeah, Oracle said the Phantom of the Opera has that vibe too. The original book is presented as investigative journalism. Right. Yeah, I feel like that was kind of a trend. Yeah. So it's not really... I mean, found footage is not new. It was just kind of presented in a different way, but, you know, it's... Yeah. It's pretty much the same. You're just kind of like showing, oh, look, I found this cache of documents, and here they are.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, actually, when I read Gaston Leroux's Phantom of the Opera, translated from French into English, at the time I believed it was something based that had really happened. And the locations that they're talking about do exist. But other people came later and debunked them, like, you know, the cave where the Phantom supposedly lived. There was something underneath some building that was claimed, but it was not a cave about the size of this room, is what they were talking about. It wasn't as big as it was in the book, where it had an underground lake and an island in the middle of the underground lake where he had a house that he had built with, you know, an organ and torture chambers and shit. No, it wasn't that big, and it was fiction. But it was written in a way like it's historical, you know, like a historical document.
Yeah.
You know, like it was like it was based on something that actually did happen. And he swears over and over again that this did happen. And I thought maybe it was, because it sounds like a serial killer.
Right.
It fits the MO. But they knew kind of what the MO of a serial killer was by that time.
They didn't call it that.
They didn't call it that, right.
Yeah.
But they knew how to make a fake serial killer based on guys like, oh, fucking, what's his name down there? The guy who had the torture castle. What was his name?
H.H. Holmes.
H.H. Holmes, yeah.
Herman Mudgett.
Yeah. Phantom of the Opera was a lot like H.H. Holmes. Similar.
Yeah. Which I kind of suspect that a lot of the stuff about H.H. Holmes was exaggerated as well. Not saying he wasn't a serial killer, because he totally was. I'm just saying a lot of the stuff might have been a little bit exaggerated. Because, like I said, they did that back then to sell papers, just like they do nowadays. It's like I said, it's no different. And that's the thing that, you know, something like analog horror, even though it's clearly a newish phenomenon, really the earliest examples of what we would now call analog horror probably only stem from like the mid 2000s, I want to say, and it didn't really take off until kind of recently. You know, there was little projects here and there that kind of people were into, but it didn't really take off until probably 2016, 2017, somewhere around there. But there have been, you know, things similar to that going all the way back to like recorded history, I feel like, even though you wouldn't even call it the same thing. Like I said, I always say that Dracula is like a found footage novel. Like, definitely. Yeah. And honestly, you know, a lot of people talk about Blair Witch Project being like the first found footage movie, but it's absolutely not. Cannibal Holocaust was a found footage movie, and that was 1980. That was exactly the very definition of a found footage movie. Yeah. You know, these people went to study the cannibals, and we found their footage, and they all got killed and eaten. You know what I mean? Here it is, and we're presenting it. So, yeah, that's exactly what that is. But the thing about Blair Witch Project is that not only, and I like the Blair Witch Project, but not only was it a good found footage movie, but they also marketed it, like, the way they marketed it was fucking genius. They marketed it like it was real. They said, and this was like kind of the early days of doing, nobody had really done this before. You know, they set up a website, these people are missing and shit like that. They told the actors, you know, you stay in hiding for like a year, so it seems like you're really missing. It's like, we want to make this seem like a real thing. They made a documentary, like a mockumentary, about this legend, like it was a real legend. So if you weren't from that area, I mean, some people thought it was real. You know what I mean? This is real footage that we found, and it's like this was a real legend that these people were making a documentary about and shit like that. It was just like a brilliant marketing ploy, and obviously it was, because the movie was made for what, $300,000, and it made like $280 million or some shit like that.
Tired many times over.
Right? You know what I mean? It's like they made it for like peanuts, relatively.
I was in Mississippi at the time, and I remember my ex-wife's, all her little friends, all her little goth friends, you know, like Melissa and Michelle were hyping this movie to me before they went to go see it, and they liked it, but I didn't go see it.
Yeah.
I think I saw it later on VHS or something, and I was like, good thing I didn't go to the theater to see this. I didn't like it, but they liked it in the theater. I'd imagine that probably in theater when it was new, and they had evidently been seeing stuff online for it. They'd been releasing stuff online.
Yeah.
And they were kind of thought it might have been real. That it might have been based on something that was real.
Yeah, people weren't sure.
Yeah, and I was trying to navigate my way through it, you know. I was older than them, you know, fucking wiser, you know, come back from the army and shit. My late 20s, early 30s, late 20s at that time. And I was like, No, that's got to be something fictional. But looking back on it, I probably should have gone with them.
They did a good job, like making it seem like it really happened. Though.
Yeah, they were like, "You ever heard that thing's really happening?"
I mean, that's a brilliant. That's a brilliant marketing.
Oh man, it's on the internet. At that time, I was like, "What's on the internet? It's probably bullshit." That was the thinking back then.
That's not real. That's not real stuff.
That's Wild West shit. Yeah, it's all those fucking nerds.
But I mean, I kind of feel like, I mean, props to them because they were way ahead of the curve on this one. Yeah. The fact that they, like I said, not only set up a whole mockumentary about the legend, but they also had a website about it with like all, you know, the missing people, and they had everything looked real.
That website gave them all that free advertising. That's how that thing blew the fuck up.
And it just blew out.
Yeah.
Now, the thing, I saw it in the theater, and I liked it. I think the more times I see it, like, the less I like it. But the guy, like I said, I think it was the guy that made Local 58, which, you know, is analog horror series. That I think it was him that said on the documentary that he was talking about the Blair Witch Project, and he said he didn't see it in the theater. He actually saw it, like, a friend of his got like a pirate copy. Yeah. And they just watched it in their dorm room, like, on a laptop. Yeah. And he's like, in some ways that made it scarier because it's like, it's almost like my friend found it. Right. And, like, found this footage, you know what I mean, and was showing it to me. He's like, I don't think it would have been quite as scary if you saw it in a theater because it would seem more like...
More official.
More like a movie, you know what I mean? He's like, watching it on a laptop was, like, kind of a lot scarier.
Yeah, there's something about having a mysterious source.
Yeah.
Know? Like that song that we played, the most mysterious song on the internet, which is, it's a great darkwave song. It wouldn't be as great if you knew who that was.
Yeah, all the magic would drain out of it, probably.
It's a good song.
Yeah.
But not knowing who it is adds to it.
And I think, the whole impetus behind horror in general, but I think, like, analog horror in particular, is that people are a lot more fascinated by mystery and ambiguity, even if they don't admit it. Because I know that, like, sometimes you see, like, an ambiguous horror movie. Like I said, I know that, like, the movie Skinamarink, which is kind of an analog horror movie, was very polarizing, with some people being like, oh my god, I'm just, like, watching little kids' feet for 90 minutes, but which in corners of walls and stuff. But it, you know, it was just trying to get across a vibe, you know. But I kind of feel like the appeal of analog horror in particular, and the reason why a lot of it is left vague, is that things are a lot scarier and are a lot more appealing when you don't know what's going on. And I kind of feel like the reason that a lot of people are talking now about, like, how analog horror is maybe kind of like getting a little stale or something like that, one is that a lot of people are making projects based on projects that already exist. And when they're doing that, it's kind of the same thing that happened with the whole Slender Man thing, where you keep adding onto the story and adding onto the lore, and the more you add onto the lore, the more you're taking the mystery away.
Just like with the Xenomorph and the fucking Yauta fucking thing from fucking Predator. You don't need to know anymore.
Yeah, it's much scarier when you don't
the more you know, the more lame it is. They really fucked up the Xenomorph shit.
That's what I'm saying. And and I was watching a couple of videos where they were talking about the Backrooms, which of course is like the massive thing going on now, which has to do with liminal spaces, which we'll talk about in a minute. But it's just kind of like, I feel like the Backrooms was much creepier when it was just the videos and nothing was explained. They're like, oh my god, it's just we slipped into this, or they call it no clipping, where they like, I slipped into this quote unquote like alternate dimension that's just these endless like rooms and hallways, and maybe there's a monster in here chasing me, but it's like, it's not explained any more than that. Like, as the you know, story got more and more popular and other people started adding their own stuff onto it and making their own projects based on it, they're coming up with all of these explanations and lore and stuff like that, and I don't know, and it takes a lot of the creepiness away. Because I think the whole point of liminal spaces being creepy is that it's not, you know, it's an empty space, but it's an empty space that should have people in it. So it's kind of like weirds you out when you see it and it's like creepy and abandoned and there's no people there. And it just gives you this really creepy, this really eerie feeling. The more you explain that, the more you explain the lore behind it, it's not creepy anymore. Shit's better when it's like mysterious. And I was talking about this a little bit when I live streamed yesterday about that movie Yellow Brick Road, which leaves a lot of questions unanswered. And that seemed to piss a lot of people off because they were like, what the fuck? Like, they didn't get the ending, or they're just like, what's going on? What is this? But I was like, I think that's way better. Don't explain it. You know what I mean? It's much scarier, like, if it's not explained. And like I said, I think that's why a lot of people liked analog horror, because a lot of the series, and, you know, they, at this point, it's almost kind of like it got to a point where it was like a parody of itself, because it just kept repeating the same tropes over and over. It's like, oh, here's the, you know, the emergency broadcast sound, and then like a creepy, you know, like message on there talking about aliens or whatever. So it's just, it kind of got, and, you know, here's a distorted face. So it kind of got a bunch of tropes, and it got a little bit tired. But I think the reason that a lot of people liked it previous was because it wasn't explained to any great degree. You know what I'm saying? That's much scarier to me. So yeah, and oh, there's Pokey.
Pokey Pants.
There's Pokey.
Miss Pokey Pants Ross.
Yeah.
Special guest.
She's like, can I get
Like,
down?
fuck it,
Can I get down now?
She's gonna take your shoes.
Can I get
Leave
down?
those shoes alone.
She's like, I'm just
She
gonna
likes to
like
tear up Jen's boots. Don't do it. She's playing it off like, oh, I wasn't going to.
yeah,
you were.
she pretends like she wasn't going
Yeah,
to.
you were going
And
to.
Tammy's like, Pookie, yeah. She's been kind of bad today.
Yeah.
Zach says that game Control also played into analog horror a lot too. Yeah, I was looking a little bit about that. I've never played it, but I was like looking up about it earlier. It's about a government bureau investigating the paranormal that can't use modern tech, so it's all tech from the 50s and 60s. Yeah, see, very, very common. I kind of feel like, though, that after a while, because here's the thing: if you're gonna make an analog horror project, there has to be some kind of like found footage. Like in a found footage movie, there has to be some fucking reason why somebody is filming this shit. You know what I mean? And I think that that's where a lot of the believability of found footage goes out the window, because at some point, if you're filming something, if like some giant like Cloverfield monster is like coming after you, you would stop filming. I mean, and just run, okay? Like most people would. You wouldn't keep filming it. So, so I like that some good found footage movies do kind of find a way around that, where it has like it gives a justification for why they would keep filming. So the thing about analog horror is that the idea of it is that it does. The weird thing about it is that, and this never really occurred to me until I read an essay about it. It doesn't have characters per se. It's almost like information that's presented to you as though it's immersing you as the character.
Yeah.
So you're trying to present the story in a way that seems like in an organic way that has a reason for being on analog media. Right. So usually what they'll come up with is, here's some tapes I found like at a garage sale, like VHS tapes that are really weird, or they'll present it as like an old TV station, like that's pretty common. So they'll do that kind of stuff. You know, it's usually like a found footage type thing. Like, we found these and they're really weird and help me explain them. Or somebody sent me these and I don't know where they came from, and all that other kind of stuff. There was also one called, which actually wasn't a video, it was actually a podcast, but started out called Archive 81. They actually made it into a Netflix series later on, which I saw, and it's actually pretty good. But I don't think it was successful enough like to get a second season. But that was basically like a guy who was hired by this mysterious company, which is again pretty common. That's very Cronenbergian. And they kind of put him out in this bunker, like in the middle of nowhere. He's supposed to like archive all of this weird ass footage. So that's a pretty common trope too. But like I said, there has to be some way of getting you into the world that seems organic, like why you're seeing these old VHS tapes. And I feel like that's why a lot of them use the old TV station trope. Local 58 was the first one that did that, and is probably like the best known one. And I think it wasn't the first analog horror project, but I think that was the one that really kicked off the big wave that came afterward. But the thing about it was that so many people liked that there were like a million ripoffs. You know what I mean? I think the best known ripoff was just called Channel 7. But they were all kind of the same. Because it's an easy in, you know? It's just like, oh, it's this weird old TV station, like in some little dinky town somewhere, and here's all this weird shit we can show that like looks, and you can use like all of this public access stuff and like public domain stuff that you found. So there's that kind of thing too. I've also seen, we talked about the Max Headroom incident before.
Yeah.
I don't remember if I thought that we had covered that in kind of a little more depth on maybe a show we did about creepy internet mysteries or something like that a long time ago.
First, because it's so old.
Yeah, I mean, we just talk about that a little bit. And like I said, that's kind of a precursor to analog horror, because that's the thing that analog horror is trying to replicate.
Yeah.
The weird thing about the Max Headroom incident, and it happened in 87, and there was actually two different stations, right? But they were both in Chicago. And whoever this was, who I'm pretty sure they still don't know exactly who it is.
I heard they have an idea.
But and the thing about it is that when he broke into the broadcast, he didn't do anything sinister or creepy even. I mean, it's inherently...
It looks creepy.
It's inherently weird because it's just somebody in a Max Headroom costume for no reason.
Yeah.
Like, just saying random shit. But it's not... it's not, like, overtly sinister. But I think people think it was creepy just because there was no context for it. Like, why the fuck would somebody do that?
You couldn't understand much of what he says.
Right.
What happened is, like you said, back in 87, somebody broke into a local television station transmission.
Right.
And I don't know how many people saw it, but a lot of people saw this mysterious figure of a guy dressed up like Max Headroom. If you don't know who that is, then you're fucked. It was a guy who was supposed to be a virtual reality image of a guy, kind of like something out of Back to the Future 2. You know, the two guys that were fighting in the 80s retro cafe, the Ayatollah and the fucking Reagan on TV. I may be clouding the issue. Anyway, this guy appears on TV and he's just rambling, and he looks like Max Headroom. And he's doing things like throwing shoes and spanking himself in the ass and talking about something. You can barely understand what he's saying. There's a lot of noise in the background. He evidently did it twice. I never did find out who it was. I did see another program that had a good explanation of who it was. It was a guy who used to work in the tech department in that television station, and he had a lot of equipment to do that with, and he knew about broadcasting and the signals, and had jammed the signal and got in there somehow. And he had been fired from that station, and he was basically trolling the station. That sounds about right. But he'd worked there evidently, and evidently only a few of his friends knew that he did that. And once they started putting it on the news, they put it on the local news that it was done. He got scared shitless and never did it again. He was evidently kind of like a shy guy. He wasn't like a nerd.
Yeah.
But did like something that they would picture the Joker doing in an old Batman fucking movie or something. You know, interrupting a fucking broadcast by your own means. I don't know how he's transmitting.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. Because it was like a bigger undertaking back then, for sure.
Yeah. I think they said they thought he was transmitting from one of their towers. That he had to get into one of their towers, and he hijacked their towers. It was them broadcasting it, but he'd taken over the feed because he knew how to do it.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
High Desert said, I like Gemini Productions on YouTube. Yeah, that's a big one. A lot of people talk about that one. Hugo said, when Peter Jackson made King Kong, he also made the lost scene of the spider in black and white of the original King Kong. Would this might also be analog horror? I don't know about that.
No.
Maybe not.
The lost spider scene. I'd like to see that. Is it out there?
I thought we saw that, like right around the time that we were watching King Kong. I thought
when did they put that back in?
Yeah, I thought they put it. I thought they put it back in.
Okay.
I thought it was in the version that we watched, but I don't remember where that was. You know what I mean? Because I think we reviewed King Kong like not too long ago, right? But yeah. So the thing about it, you know, like I said, it's kind of almost become a trope at this point. But I don't want to shit on the subgenre too hard because of that. Because all horror, all movie subgenres, all fiction subgenres, they all have tropes. I mean, that's kind of how you categorize them into different subgenres, right? I mean, slasher movies have tropes, obviously. So, analog horror is going to have tropes as well. Usually, what it is, it'll look like something from either the 1960s to the 1990s. That's usually the thing. It's going to look like it's on VHS, or it's going to look like an old TV broadcast. A lot of times, not always, because some of them look like old video games. They do a lot of that, like cursed video games, haunted video games. They do a lot of that kind of stuff too. And there's a lot of overlap also with ARGs, which is kind of the same as a series, but it's expanded out to other media. So something like the Blair Witch Project would almost kind of be like an ARG, because it also had a documentary, and it also had, it had media outside of the film itself, you know what I'm saying, that was meant to feed into the lore. So that's kind of like a similar thing. But what it'll usually have, it's usually set up like somebody finding a bunch of tapes, or like some weird kind of broadcast that's usually interrupted by something. Now I'm gonna what?
Here is the Max Headroom incident. Want to see it? They have a recording of the original incident. They were playing a game, and this guy busts in. There's the game. Oh, here he comes. Okay, so it's just black for a while. There he is. And then this comes on. That's it. And you can't understand what he's saying.
Well,
they did have subtitles on some versions.
Yeah. Because the version that was on the Iceberg video we watched last night had subtitles on it.
Yeah.
So they actually have figured out what he said. But like I said, there's a lot of background noise, like a lot of kind of annoying background noise that he put in.
And then it goes back to the news.
Zach says, "Tom, clean your screen."
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got like your little fingerprints and shit all over it, probably.
Yeah, I cleaned it.
But yeah, so I feel like the common trope is that, and this is kind of going back to Local 58, which a lot of other projects, like, I don't want to say ripped off, that seems a little uncharitable, but you know what I mean. But it'll have a thing where it's usually some kind of larger entity or entities that are kind of trying to get into our world. So it's usually like aliens, like an alien intelligence, or it's like some kind of Lovecraftian elder gods or something, or it's some kind of shady corporation, kind of like you have in Stranger Things, like they accidentally opened a rift to another dimension, like shit like that. Although you do see variations of it. Like there's one, I haven't seen the whole thing, but there's one called, that's kind of more recent. I think it started in 2019 or 2020 maybe. And it was called, it's called the Tangy virus, I think it's called. And it's set in Louisiana. And that one's actually more about like these spores that you get from like drinking the water. But then they like they're like mind control spores. I guess it's kind of, and I think there was another one that had that same kind of thing. Because isn't there that organism that can control ants?
Yeah.
By like putting that, and I think that's kind of where that idea comes from.
It's a fungus or a mold.
Right. So there's like a lot of stuff about, like some of them, there's kind of a little subgenre where it's kind of like missing people and murders and stuff like that. But it seems like most of the really popular ones are more esoteric, I guess. It's because it usually has to do with aliens wanting to take over humans, or like I said, like some interdimensional beings or some shit like that. There's actually one, and I don't even know if I'd call it's analog horror for sure, but I don't think it's a series. I think it's just one video. And they showed some of it on the video we were watching last night. It was called Corner Folk. And it's basically just a guy who is talking about these transdimensional beings, and there's only certain ones that can go from like parallel dimensions like into this other parallel dimension, and he thinks that he has one in his house. So it's basically just like this short video of him like filming around his house, and these corner folk like kind of coming out of the corners and stuff, and it's actually like pretty creepy, and I really dug it. But so like I said, some of them are just really simple. Like some of the series have been going on for years and years and have like all of this exhaustive lore and everything, and some of them are just like one video, you know what I mean? I kind of feel like one of the earliest ones, and I actually watched this one today, I think when it first started out and went viral, I'm pretty sure it was just one video. I think it's 4 now, but it's called No Through Road. And that was from, I believe, the mid-2000s, maybe 2006, 2007, something like that. And it was basically made by some British teenagers, and they're just all in a car, and they're kind of like, you know, hanging out and doing shit like teenagers do, and they come to this tunnel that's at night, and it's a, you know, that's, I can't remember the name of the tunnel, but it's just like no through road, private drive or whatever, and they go through there, and then like it's only about 10 minutes long, and they keep circling back to the same place again, and they are freaking out because they can't get out of this loop that they're in. Like they keep driving and driving, and they're just like, oh my god, there's that sign again, there's that tunnel again, you know what I mean? It's like really good because I like that kind of stuff. And then like at the end, like this weird person like appears and kills them all, because like at the beginning it's just kind of like, hey, these 4 kids were found dead in their car, like, you know, whatever, we don't know what happened to them, but here was their cell phone video, you know what I mean? So that was a really early example of the genre because it was presented as though it was real. But I feel like it took a long time for other people to start making stuff, you know? I think it really took Local 58, which was kind of the first one to present itself as archives of an old like local TV channel with just like all this weird shit. And then like it was normal at first, but then it would start doing stuff like the moon was like a being that was trying to like kill you and shit like that.
The moon.
So yeah. Well, that's what, like, the guy that made it, he was just kind of like, I kind of liked the idea of like the moon being like a malevolent being, like some kind of alien intelligence or some kind of elder god or something like that. So, but he kind of had it where it's just like regular ass, you know, broadcasts like from some shitty little local station from the 80s or whatever, and then there would just be weirder like emergency broadcast signal, and they'd be like, go outside, look at the moon, you know what I mean? It would be like weird shit like that. So it's like, it's really effective like the way they do it, because if it's done well, and a lot of it's done kind of badly, but that's true of any kind of horror, if it's done well, it builds up, you know, where it starts out kind of normal. Like I said, you're just at home in the 80s watching some regular shit on TV, and then all of a sudden, like, just very slowly, just weird shit starts to infiltrate like into the broadcast or whatever. So I think that was really good at doing that. And I think Local 58 was the one, even though it wasn't the first analog horror, it was the one that kind of opened up the possibilities for everybody, I guess, and like got other people interested in doing their own series. And I will say that a lot of them did kind of rip that off like pretty blatantly, but some of the rip-offs were pretty good too. And I don't, like I said, I don't want to be uncharitable about that, because the cool thing about analog horror is that it's really collaborative, like I said, and, you know, nobody has copyrights on their IPs or anything like that, really. So you just put up stuff because you want to, and if other people want to make a series in your universe, like with your lore, like you can do that. And a lot of creators that are first starting out, like when they're teenagers and something, they'll do kind of the same thing that, you know, Slender Man, for example, did for fiction writers. It's a, you know, it's a character that already exists, that came from 4chan originally. It just came from a photo, and people just started writing stories about it, and now there's like this massive fucking lore about this, just this random
skinny guy
that somebody stuck in a photo like a long time, like somebody photoshopped into a photo a long time ago, and they just, but that's kind of cool because everyone just keeps building on it.
So how do you find this stuff? Do you just search for it? Do you search for, you know, analog horror and it would come up?
It seems like something? A lot of
or is it hidden?
It's not really so much hidden, it's there. But the thing about it is that there's so much stuff on YouTube that a lot of times if you don't know what you're looking for, I kind of like, there's a lot of channels that cover analog horror, like Nexpo is probably one of the best known ones. And he'll do like real deep dives on, you know, his videos are like an hour, 2 hours long about the lore behind certain series. So like if he likes a certain series, like he'll do like a big long video about it, and then like its popularity will usually get like a lot more. So he's usually like a good bellwether of which ones are good or which ones are successful. Like if he notices it and starts talking about it, then usually it'll get more popular. And I feel like there's kind of like, you know, Reddit boards and stuff, like the threads and stuff where people talk about ones that they like. Because the video we were watching last night, the what do you call it, the iceberg one, he actually mentioned a couple, like way down in his tier 6 or whatever, that he really liked but that didn't have that many views. Because the thing about it is that analog horror, it really kind of started to take off, 2016, 2017, something like that. And then by the time 2020, 2021 came along, it was starting to get a little bit oversaturated. Like everybody was trying to make one, and a lot of them were kind of samey. So there were so many that it wasn't kind of like the old days where you could just like drop this enigmatic video like on YouTube and like just people would find it and be like, holy crap, look at this weird shit, because there was just so much of it.
Yeah.
So it was a lot harder to get noticed, especially because a lot of the ones that were coming out were so similar to ones that had already been done. Like, you know what I mean? And I don't know, like I'm a creative person myself. I don't make analog horror, obviously, although I have thought about doing a project like that, but
what's up, Oscar?
Hey, Oscar, what's up?
Yeah.
I just feel like I wouldn't like to play in someone else's sandbox in the sense of like taking their lore and making. I know like a lot of people start out like that, like writing fanfic or, like I said, doing like writing Slenderman stories or making an analog horror thing based on Marble Hornets or based on Five Nights at Freddy's. There's a lot of those based on Five Nights at Freddy's. So I don't know, but I understand why people want to do that. And if they want to do that, if they just want to take some lore because it's, I don't know if I'd necessarily like easier for them, but maybe it's makes them feel better to be like, oh, well, I already have like an existing framework that I can work within, and it makes it easier for them or kind of gets their confidence up. Because a lot of people that started out making sort of, like I said, I don't want to say rip-off, but I can't like think of a better word, that made homage, let's say homages, that made like homages to other analog horror. Like a lot of them went on to do their own creative projects later on. So I think like it's a good, even though I wouldn't do it, like I wouldn't go, oh, I'm going to make an analog horror and it's going to be set in the Five Nights at Freddy's universe. But, that's exactly what that one, what was that one called? The Walton Files? That's what that, and that was hugely successful. But I just wouldn't, I don't know. I kind of like to come up with my own ideas. But I see how, like I said, it's cool because it's kind of like a low barrier to entry. And
we got to come up with one.
I've thought about it. Like I said, it's kind of probably at this point, everyone's kind of sick of them.
Yeah.
But,
we might be able to take a different take.
We'll see, and that's what I'm kind of hoping happens, because it's gotten to a point now where like some come out that are like parodies, just because there are so many well-known tropes. It's like, here's a pop-up distorted face, and what I mean. It's just, and this, here's the emergency broadcast noise and stuff like that. So there have been so many that use those same tropes over and over again. It's kind of like just the regular horror movie equivalent of a jump scare, like a cat jump scare. Let's to be more specific. Right. It's a cat flies in the window. Oh my god, it's just a cat. You know what I mean? So it's that kind of shit. So it's become those tropes have become ubiquitous that now people are making parody videos of it. And once you start doing parody videos, then it's kind of time to go back to the drawing board and like start over. Because I feel like, I don't know, there's a lot you could do with that concept still.
I'd make a fake 1970s news report where you're on location, all right, where they just uncovered a body stash from some serial killer, and you just make up a serial killer that never existed.
I've thought about doing that.
Yeah, and you show the bodies and everything.
You'd have to. The thing about it is that the reason that I didn't want to do that, because there are some that are sort of like that, but you kind of get into a little bit of a gray area there, because you don't want to use real photos of real dead people. You would have to make it yourself.
You have to do it yourself, yeah. But you make it real low res and age it, so it looks like it was like a local television station back in '72. They accidentally found some shit. And they were just, breaking news. We just happened to, go by a whole bunch of fucking people dead on the side of the road, and you gotta have like a weird fucking angle on it, Why are they in these positions? That kind of shit.
Yeah, like I said, there's a lot of shit you could do with it. And even because look, everything in horror has been done, okay? Yeah. Everything. And if you can think of it, somebody's done it somewhere. Even though if it wasn't famous or popular or anything like that, somebody's done it somewhere, I can guarantee it. So the challenge then becomes to take what's already been done and try to find a fresh angle on it, because there's always a fresh angle on it.
Yeah, you gotta have it where you're the first on the crime scene. you're recording it. Then the cops show up and kick you off the crime scene. That kind of shit. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, like I said, and I think there have been some like that. There don't seem to be as many crime-based ones as paranormal-based ones, because I think you can do more with the paranormal kind of shit, I guess. But I saw one the other day that they were talking about one on one documentary I was watching, and I can't remember what it was called, but it was kind of had to do with like murders, but it was like child murders and stuff like that. So some people were just kind of like, it was a little bit, it was kind of fucked up. You know what I mean? Like it was kind of popular, but then like as it went on, it kind of got more and more fucked up, and people were like, so I'm not really, feeling this.
Tom and Jenny Ross got a nice ring to it. Speaking of rings, we got wedding rings.
We finally got our. Yeah. That was that one.
Finally got one.
And he finally got his too. It took me 3 times to get one that fit on his finger.
Yeah.
I have the ring measurement thing, but for some reason I measured his finger the first time, and then I ordered that ring and it was way too small. And then I was like, well shit. And I got like a size and a half up, and then I got that one, then we got that one, and that one was also too small. And then finally I was like, fuck it, I'm just getting 2 sizes bigger. And then finally that fit. It took like forever. But they did take the other ones back, so you know what I mean. So yeah, so there's that. I think I already covered this stuff too about how
it's gonna be 9 in about 15 minutes.
Yeah, I know. I can see the little clock. You know what I mean? Yeah.
What time we have to leave here at what? 9:30?
Well, about 9:30. We should probably leave by 9:30.
Okay.
Because it opens at 10.
So we got another about a half hour probably for the show.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
So yeah, you're like I said, you're also gonna see one thing that they do a lot, and Local 58 did this, and a lot of other ones do this as well, is taking already existing public domain media, which like I said, I think that's kind of the appeal of this for people that don't have a lot of time to create their own content, is doing much like Vaporwave would do, where they're taking this kind of old forgotten media and like remixing it and putting it in a new context. So, you know, you'll find this cache of weird old training films from the 1940s, or, you know, strange commercials that don't make any sense or something like that, and you'll just kind of take those but remix them to like make them even more sinister. Like, so you're taking something that is seemingly very mundane and making it creepy, you know? Like, and it's weird because when we were talking about the Max Headroom incident, the shit that he said and the shit that he was doing is not scary.
No, it's a bunch of inside jokes. He's talking about people.
Yeah.
You don't know who he's talking about.
It's not scary, but people still, this many fucking decades later, people still talk about that just because I guess the act itself was so weird, and the fact that it was never explained.
Yeah.
Like I said, when there's no context to something, it's a lot creepier because you're not really sure, like, why did this happen? So your imagination just starts going crazy.
The channel Wang did a good show on it. I think it's probably lasted about a half hour. And from what I remember, Wang had got onto some pretty good leads about who it was. And it was, I think that's where I got the information that it was somebody that worked there at one time.
That would make sense because some of the stuff that he was saying sounded like you said, kind of like inside jokes.
Yeah, well, he was
talking about specific people,
joking about people that he worked with,
right.
Type of deal. Yeah, that evidently were still in there. and he was also talking to his friends.
Yeah,
he talked to his friends who knew he was doing it.
Right.
That was another thing that he was doing.
High Desert said, I would love to see a found footage type story based on searching for Egyptian mummies in the Grand Canyon.
As if they were in the Grand Canyon.
Well,
so
maybe
Egypt was huge, huh?
Maybe there's some way that they got there. Like, you could, you know, if you're a writer, you could come up with some way that they could have plausibly got there. You know what I mean?
You had to make out with something scary.
They
had a dimension door.
Right, so that's what it was, a Stargate.
They went they went to any desert that they knew of. They were trying to find these other deserts. Even though Egypt wasn't really that much of a desert back in those days. It was, but it wasn't as bad as it is now.
Yeah. Another thing, too, that a lot of analog horror does is they pretty much, I don't know about universally, but almost universally, I think they all have, like, unhappy endings. Like, it's always whatever the monster is, like, gets in. What's the one, I don't even remember if this one was Local 58 or if it was the Gemini one. What's the one where it said, like, basically that it was all of these kind of you know, it had like an American flag in it, and it was like my fellow Americans, yada yada. And it's just like basically like the Americans or the aliens have like taken over, so that's telling you to like kill yourselves and your family, and so like that's so the aliens can't take us alive and all this other kind of stuff. But like the way it's worded, and it looked just like those old, like kind of patriotic sort of what do they call is like the things they put on TV, like the commercials and stuff, and it kind of looked like that, and it was like kind of creepy just the shit that it said, because a lot of them don't show. Yeah, a lot of them show like weird imagery. It's usually like kind of distorted faces or like shadowy figures or something like that. But a lot of the scariness like kind of comes from the inexplicable nature of what it is you're looking at, because you're not really sure what it is or where it's coming from. And a lot of it comes from the text too. Like if you read the text, and it just gets like creepier and creepier. So there's that kind of shit too. So, you know, as I said, not been around for a hugely long time, but you know, Local 58 probably the one that sort of kicked off the boom in it, which is sort of, I feel like it's kind of starting to abate now, especially since Skinamarink came out in, when did that come out? 2021, maybe 2022, which was kind of like the first big analog horror film, and a lot of people saw it, and a lot of people were talking about it, and I think that brought a lot of new attention to the subgenre as well, which maybe got a lot more people into it. But like I said, at this point, it just seems a little bit oversaturated, maybe. You know, so there's, holy crap. And I was gonna say too, I think I mentioned it earlier, but if you haven't seen the movie Broadcast Signal Intrusion, I think it's from 2021. That's really good. I did a review of it. I can't remember if I did it on Flickers of Fear or maybe over my Scare Salon channel, but I did a review of it a while back. And if you're into analog horror, if you're into like conspiracy type stuff, or because it's kind of loosely based on the, not necessarily on the Max Headroom incident, but on that kind of thing where like there's a weird signal intrusion, like, and they're trying to figure out like there's an investigation to like where it came from. But it's like a really good, I mean, I don't know, I really liked the movie a lot. So so yeah, I think I talked earlier about how the whole analog horror thing is sort of linked with creepypasta, which is sort of like the fictional equivalent, I suppose, because it's the same kind of thing where people are writing these stories and trying to make people think that they really happened, and then other people take that concept and run and like write their own stories within that mythos, which is kind of the same thing that they're doing with this. I believe it was Local 58 also that gave the subgenre its name, because one of its videos, he didn't mean to obviously, but one of the videos said analog horror at 476 megahertz, and so people just started calling the genre that like after that came out. And I'm pretty sure the guy that did, I didn't even realize this until I was watching this documentary, but the guy that did Local 58 is the same guy that did Candle Cove, if you guys remember that very, very famous creepypasta, which is about, because I mean Local 58 was like an offshoot of Candle Cove. Candle Cove was about this really, really weird creepy kids show that was on this channel, and then he later on made a whole thing about that channel that show was on. And if you've never seen, there was a sci-fi original series, I believe it's on Shudder, or it was last time I checked, that's called Channel Zero. And each season, they take like kind of a well-known creepypasta and, you know, adapt it, basically. And I think the first season or the second season was Candle Cove, and it was really, really good. Because that's like a really creepy story. They also did, shit, man, what was the name of that one where they were down in their garage and then all of a sudden this door appeared that wasn't there before? I love shit like that. That was a good one too, but I can't remember the name of the story, but that was also a good one. I didn't see all the seasons, but I saw the first like 2 or 3. But it's a good show if you haven't seen it. Like I said, I'm pretty sure it's on Shudder. But yeah, so let me see. I'm kind of jumping around. I think I talked about...
Now my nose is getting stuffed up like crazy for some reason.
Is it really?
You got to run there and blow my nose constantly.
Yeah.
I've been taking antihistamines trying to get it to...
Poor Tom.
Terrible.
Yeah, it is. I think I already talked about No 3 Road. I've talked about Local 58 a little bit. There's another one called CHSS. That's another big one. And that first came out in 2016. And that was made by a guy named Turkey Lennon III.
Turkey Lennon?
Yeah. Yeah, like, you know. So he's actually from Singapore. And like I said, a lot of these, when he first put his first video out, he was 15 years old. So a lot of these people are like teenagers putting this stuff out. Like you said, they have time and are obviously a lot more media savvy. But CHSS is actually about a mental health program, like that the government, the U.S. government, like, you know, it's under their auspices or whatever. And then there's kind of like, I don't know, it just gets weirder and weirder like as time goes on. It has a little bit of an ARG kind of vibe to it as well, because I think it also has like Twitter, and it has like its own website and all this other kind of stuff. Because there's kind of a gray area between something being an analog horror, like just a series, and something being an ARG. I feel like ARG, one, it has to have stuff outside of the series. Like it has like a website that purports that stuff is really happening, and it has like all of this outside media. Actually, some ARGs have even had like physical media. You know what I mean? It's like they'll leave clues for people and like leave actual shit, like in a park someplace or somewhere like that, like for people to find, which I always thought was really, really cool.
When those first started to appear in the late 90s, when we were messing around the internet, we couldn't tell the difference between what was real and fake.
Yeah.
We thought some of that stuff was real.
Yeah.
Like some kind of crime case down in Mississippi. We were wondering, what is that really going on? Because we were in Mississippi at the time.
Right.
You know what I mean? It was weird. It wasn't though. It was a fake case.
Yeah, I mean, the whole point of an ARG is it's, you know, alternate reality game. Yeah. It's supposed to look as realistic as possible. So you're supposed to set everything up, if somebody stumbles across it, to think this is a real shit that happened. Yeah,
and back then when you were young, you didn't run into it yourself. Your friends would tell you about it. You'd be driving in a car, listening to music, and they're talking about it before you ever saw it. This is before, you know, cell phones with internet access. Long before that, so you couldn't check anything until much later. Maybe you had forgotten about it. So there'd just be like these ongoing mysteries. Yeah, you noticed something going on up in fucking whatchamacallit. Really? Oh yeah, they're killing people. Serial killer up there. You know, it could be anything, but the person telling you this stuff doesn't know that they saw that was an AARG that they saw.
Yeah.
You know, they think it's real. So you're like, oh wow, okay, you know. It was another time.
I love the concept of an ARG, but like I said, I can see how it can muddy the waters a little bit because the whole point of an ARG is to make it look as realistic as possible. That's you're supposed to be immersed in the game, like it's really happening.
Right.
You know what I mean? So they and a lot of the creators work really hard to get that across.
Yeah. Well, we didn't know about it. We better lock them doors.
I mean, you should anyway. So you never know. There's probably there's real serial killers running around too. Like you know, other than all the fake ones. DVD Dragon said, when is Tom going to rev that motorcycle again? I got low T. Yeah, because when I was doing the live stream yesterday, I think you were down there like revving the motorcycle.
Oh, yeah.
And I said something like, oh, I don't know if you guys can hear that. But he's like, because you were working on the motorcycle in the garage.
It was a Buell XB12R, SR. Really.
And DVD Dragon said, oh, my testosterone level just went up just hearing,
Hell yeah.
hearing the motors.
103 horsepower, 103 horsepower, 95 foot-pounds of torque in a fucking 400-pound motorcycle. Hell yeah, that'll put some hair on you. It's not fast, but it's quick.
It'll put hair on your
Very
balls.
Quick.
Put hair on your balls.
That fucking 1/8 of a mile will beat a Hayabusa off from a dead stop. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
You can do a wheelie in any gear, pretty much, if you know how to do it.
You better not be doing that. Oh, no. I'm sure you're doing it when I'm not looking. He does all kind of shit when I'm not looking, probably, and then doesn't tell me about it.
Yeah. You only got 5 gears anyway. Yeah.
Let's see. I already talked a little bit about Marble Hornets. I kind of feel like most people know, because that's kind of like the big one, and that's made into a movie and everything. And like I said, the crazy thing about Marble Hornets is that started. It didn't invent Slenderman. Slenderman was, like I said, that was like a 4chan. It was like a photo contest, like come up with some creepy shit or something. And it was one that went viral. It was just like photos of like a bunch of kids running, and then somebody put what we would today know as Slenderman like in the background, and then people just started writing stories about this. So Marble Hornets was a web series that was based on that character, And it went on and on and on. I think it started in 2009, and it just went on forever. And I think it even had like a it's got like 87 videos or 90 something videos, and it's got like a bunch of videos over on its other little spin-off, which is called To the Ark. I actually started watching Marble Hornets for a while, but it's like, I don't know, I couldn't really get into it. Like the first bit of it was good, but then I was just kind of like, I don't know, I kind of started thinking it was getting a little too convoluted. But maybe that was just me. I should maybe like give it another go one of these days. But because a lot of people did seem to like it. Like I said, it was so popular that they made a movie in 2015 that was based on it called Always Watching, which was not great. But yeah, Gemini Home Entertainment, which somebody brought up before, that was kind of another big one. And that was slightly more recent. That actually started in 2019. And that one is kind of similar concept to Local 58. It's kind of like the channel is supposedly a distributor of VHS tapes. It's obviously doesn't really exist, but you know, they're pretending like it does. And they're it's kind of like these tapes that are showing up that are showing all these different like weird incidents around the world that have to do like with alien creatures, like I said. And it has something, the main antagonist of Gemini Home Entertainment is the Iris, which is like a rogue planet, but it's a being, like it's intelligent. You know what I mean? So that's kind of part of that lore there. So like I said, a lot of them that are real popular have that kind of similar trope where it's some kind of cosmic horror antagonist. I feel like it's either aliens or it's usually like some Lovecraftian kind of shit or like a trans-dimensional being or something. I also mentioned the Walton Files earlier, which is based on Five Nights at Freddy's, which I kind of feel like, not just like Local 58 has its all own like whole subgenre of offshoots, I kind of feel like Five Nights at Freddy's also has a whole subgenre of offshoots. And can we talk about, has anybody seen the new Five Nights at Freddy's movies? I haven't seen it. But can we talk about why a couple years back they made Willy's Wonderland with Nicolas Cage, which was essentially Five Nights at Freddy's, but called something completely different, you know? And then it was, I don't know, it was just weird to me that they made that, and then they made a Five Nights at Freddy's movie, like, this year. I don't know, I didn't get it. I'm like, how many, like, it's a cool concept. I'm not saying that, like, with the animatronic, like, the cursed or haunted animatronics and stuff, but it's just, like, it doesn't seem like a broad enough topic, or a broad enough premise to justify all of the media that's been written about it. What I'm saying is I'm not really sure why Five Nights at Freddy, like the premise behind Five Nights at Freddy's, why it struck such a chord to an extent that like there's a whole subgenre of people making content based on that lore. Because it seems like kind of, it's a cool concept, it's just kind of narrow. Maybe. I don't know. I haven't watched all of the stuff, so I don't really know. Maybe it is like much larger than I thought. But isn't there like a serial killer involved and he kills kids and puts them inside the animatronics or something? Isn't it something like that? I don't know. But it's just, it's crazy to me that that was one of the ones that was like super, super popular, because it just seems like kind of a narrow premise. That's all. Also, the Mandela Catalog. That's another real famous one, and that's another one that has a lot of ripoffs. That is the one that kind of came up with the concept of the alternates. This is actually set in Wisconsin in the 90s, and the alternates are basically like doppelgangers who kind of talk their human counterparts into killing themselves, and then they basically like take over. I think it also kind of has like a biblical angle, which a lot of people thought was interesting because that's not usually something that you see in analog horror. So I think that kind of struck a chord as well. But the concept of the alternates, like doppelgangers and stuff, that's really, really popular. Like after the Mandela Catalog came out, like a lot of analog horror like used that trope as well. Some other ones that I talk about, because I kind of want to talk about the Backrooms before it gets too late. What?
Biblical angle? You could do fucking you could do Battle of Armageddon and fucking and Revelations right now. It'd be fucking hot probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could misquote the Bible about plagues being poured out and, you know, the battle in fucking over Israel and shit, fucking the world's armies and Gog and Magog and shit. I could write some shit up. That'd be awesome.
It probably.
Yeah, I'd do most of it. I'd fucking become like a fake preacher to deliver it.
Oh, that would be good because you'd be good at that.
Hell yeah! Today, the next thing, I'm here to be your shepherd you through this times of hardship. Yeah, I'd go all fucking Baptist minister on him. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
People would probably believe it though.
They probably would.
Then he starts sending me money, and I keep doing it.
What's wrong with that?
I keep doing it and doing it.
Win-win.
The next thing you know, I am a fucking apocalyptic Baptist minister.
I'll talk you down from that.
Yeah,
but you can take the money though. I mean,
Yeah.
that's okay. If they're dumb enough to send you money, then
Yeah, I don't think there's been any jacked Baptist ministers fucking televangelists yet.
probably not. Although I will say that I believe, what is it, the 90s or 2000s? I want to say during the height of the extreme everything. They would have, like, in Christian high schools and shit like that, they would have, like, Christian bodybuilder dudes come.
Yeah.
And they would do...
For strength.
Yeah, and they would do, like, demonstrations, like,
Yeah.
on stage and be like, you know, Jesus is making me strong, like, that kind of shit.
Lifting those weights had nothing to do with it.
I know, but it's
and
like...
taking those steroids had nothing to do with it either.
I know. But that was kind of a thing. I remember that being a thing.
Yeah.
Like, around that time period. So there was... I think there was some that did, like, karate and stuff, too.
Yeah.
Like,
Breaking boards for Jesus.
Breaking boards
That's
for Jesus,
awesome.
pretty much.
Yeah.
Well, it's like they wanted anything that would get bored kids to come in there and be like, give them something to look at, I guess.
Yeah.
And then it's like, you know, they can hammer home the Jesus message, like, at the end. Like, after you watch somebody break boards and,
Yeah.
you know, lift 300 pounds or whatever.
Fucking the kung fu guys are fucking talking about throwing chi balls and shit. That's just ridiculous. Yeah.
I just threw a
Tillman.
ball
I think his name was Tillman, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
No, but yeah. No, the Mandela catalog, one of the things in that was that Lucifer is actually disguising himself as the Archangel Gabriel. That's like one aspect of the plot, too.
So you see an angel, don't believe it, that's the devil.
Yeah, that's, yeah. So, let's see. There was another more recent one called The Smile Tapes. That was from 2021. That was actually kind of about a drug that's called Smile. And people that take it kind of makes them smile and laugh uncontrollably. So that one has like a lot of distorted face kind of stuff going on. And I think the cause ends up being like some kind of extraterrestrial fungus. That's another pretty common thing, like fungus.
Sounds like they got that from Batman with the Smile X. Cast.
Yeah. Probably. Well, like I said, there's, you know, people are drawing inspiration from all different kind of stuff. And then one of the weirder ones, I think, is the monument mythos. And that's kind of like, it's sort of analog horror. It's also kind of like alternate history. It was made by this guy whose name is Mr. Manticore. And I don't know where he came up with this fucking idea. It's so random. So the premise of it, I'm not really sure, because I haven't seen all of them, so I don't really know if I can explain it adequately. But so there's 3 universes. Now, the main universe in the story is called the Dean-verse, and that's where James Dean is the 37th president of the United States.
Wow,
like I said,
awesome.
they're alternate histories. Like I said. Now, I think in that universe, I think the Earth gets destroyed, like at the end, like with only a few survivors left.
Yeah.
And then, so all the events leading up to this apocalypse have been sort of like documented by this person who has uploaded the videos to YouTube under a pseudonym. There's also a second universe, which is called the Nixon-verse, where Richard Nixon was in the James Dean universe, but then he gets transplanted to the other ones, but he also gets like God powers somehow. I don't really know how.
Nixon becomes God?
Pretty much.
Okay.
And so then there's that. And then there's the third universe, which is called the Montyverse, which has Montgomery Clift in it, who is a famous actor from a long time ago. And he also runs as president, but James Dean is his vice president. So there's this whole, but it's kind of like an apocalyptic narrative. But there's just like these random people from history, like being presidents and having God powers and shit like that. It's just so bizarre. And like I said, I'm not really sure. And I think one of the main things in it is that the reason it's called the Monument Mythos is because all of the main monuments around the world, like particularly in the United States and shit, like the Statue of Liberty and stuff, like have some kind of stuff in them, like some kind of alien stuff or transdimensional beings or something like that. Or they're alive? I can't remember. It's been a while since I've seen it. But it has something to do with all the like monuments and, you know, like Mount Rushmore and shit like that. So that's kind of crazy. So yeah, I think we mentioned corner folk before. So let's talk about the thing that kind of took off in 2019 called the Backrooms. Now this is an analog horror concept that originated kind of like Slenderman did. It originated with a single photo on 4chan. The photo, which is, you know, went viral, so most people have probably seen it, but it was just this random photo, nobody really knows where it was taken, but of these kind of empty hallways with this sort of yellow carpet and this kind of ugly yellow wallpaper. And it's creepy looking for reasons that aren't real easy to categorize. You know what I'm saying? But it really seemed to strike a chord with a lot of people, like this creepy photo. Because what it was, I think that somebody basically on this 4chan board, I think it was like the paranormal board on 4chan, and they asked people to just post images. I think it was post disquieting images that just feel off. That was the prompt, I guess. So one of the pictures was this one, which had been floating around for a year, but when it was posted on 4chan, it kind of went crazy and like everybody picked up on it. And somebody commented,
I didn't see it
after that photo.
You showed it?
No, I didn't show it. I don't have it. But like I said, it's easy to find. It's everywhere. So somebody posted after the photo this paragraph. They said, if you're not careful and you no-clip out of reality in the wrong areas, you'll end up in the back rooms, where it's nothing but the stink of old moist carpet, the madness of mono yellow, because the stuff was yellow, the carpet and the wallpaper was yellow, the endless background noise of fluorescent lights at maximum hum buzz, and approximately 600 million square miles of randomly segmented empty rooms to be trapped in.
Oh man, I've had dreams like that.
Yeah, so I think, like I said, I think the combination of the photo, which is pretty creepy for, like I said, reasons you can't really articulate, and the fact that somebody commented that paragraph afterward made everybody's imaginations just go crazy. So what people started doing was started creating a lore about the Backrooms, where it was this, where you could kind of essentially like slip into another dimension, and you would go into this place that was just endless rooms and hallways with nothing in them and nobody in them, and there was like no way out.
Yeah, I had dreams like that.
Yeah, I have too.
Deep underneath the ground.
I think a lot of people have.
Yeah, deep underneath the ground with no windows. Had another one where I was trapped into a mall, and it had people in the mall, but every escalator I went, every time I tried to leave the mall, I ended up being teleported back somewhere else inside the mall. I could never actually get out of the mall. I would go up an escalator, and then as I reached the top of the escalator, I was down at the bottom of the escalator again.
Yeah.
That was another thing that was weird.
See, that's a very nightmarish scenario, and I think that a lot of people have nightmares like that, and I think that's kind of why the Backrooms took off in such a way. Because everybody can relate to those horrible nightmares that you have where you're just
endless
in this
loops.
Yeah, it was just like endless loops and you can't get out, and it's just like, that's really, really scary.
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty common dream to have. So as time went on, I think the most popular video, I can't remember the name of the kid that made it, but he kind of made one where it's just these, and it took him like a month to make it or something, and it's just like all these yellow, it's basically like a, you know, POV, like you went into these back rooms and you're just like walking around, there's like nothing, and then there's like weird shit, like, you know, a car crashed into the wall or something, and then like there's kind of a monster sort of after you, but you can't really see him all that well. It's actually really well done, but I think that's what most people think of when they think of the Backrooms. But the thing about it is that it kind of went into, much like, you know, the Slender Man became the Slenderverse, where everybody started writing all this lore and stories about it, and the same thing kind of happened with Backrooms. Like I said, it really struck a chord, and people started adding onto the lore. They started adding like levels to it, like it was a game. There's games designed around it. There's all these kind of stories around it, and I don't know. They're making A24 is making a feature film based on the Backrooms concept. I don't know when it's coming out, but I've heard that they're making it, and I'm not really sure how I feel about it. Like, you could make a really good movie out of that concept, but I feel like the creepy thing about the original photo and the original video that the kid made was that there was, like I said, not really any context. Basically, the only context was this is like a dimension that you could slip into, and his thing was, here's somebody that's just, this kind of scientific research thing that's kind of trying to figure out what it is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's essentially, it's a little bit like in Stranger Things, like the Upside Down. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like another dimension, which kind of looks like this one, but a bit different. But I kind of feel like if they try to over-explain it, and I think at this point it maybe has been over-explained just with all of the outside lore that it has, because people keep adding, like I said, new level and sub-basements and all this other kind of stuff and explaining where it came from and who the monsters are in it and stuff like that. You keep doing that and it's not going to be scary anymore. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We were talking about that before, that the more you gild the lily, the more you kind of explain things, and the more you put things in there, like, the less frightening it is. It's much more frightening when it's just that. Like, you know what I mean? Because you can imagine, what if you were just walking through a mall or something and you went back to use the bathroom and you opened the door and then you were in there and you couldn't get out. Like, that would be fucking horrifying, right? Yeah. But no explanation. You don't need to know why it's like that. You don't need to know why it's there. There don't even have to be a monster in it, really. I think the Backrooms thing, the monster in it is cool, but I don't think it even needed the monster, because I think the whole concept by itself is creepy. Yeah. And so when the Backrooms went viral, it kind of brought to the forefront the idea of a liminal space. And I think that's kind of another thing that you see a lot with, the vaporwave kind of trends and dead mall videos, things like that. And I think the fascination with dead malls is because people are fascinated in general with liminal spaces. Now, liminal spaces, it's usually described as something like that's in between, like a hallway or something. But in the modern parlance, I think that most people use it to designate the feeling that you get from seeing a place that's usually really crowded with people that has no people in it.
Yeah, it no longer has a purpose.
Yeah.
That too.
And there's a very specific emotion that brings up in people. And so I think the Backrooms is really good at, the whole concept of it was really good at kind of making people feel that. Like I said, obviously, because it really struck a chord, and the whole dead mall thing struck a chord. You wouldn't think, if you went back in time 20 years ago for something, and you told people that millions of people would be watching videos of a dude just walking around an empty shopping mall.
Yeah, a dying shopping mall. Yeah.
People would think you were fucking crazy.
Yeah.
That, people would entertain themselves watching that.
And how much money that time is worth to a television corporation. You're like, wait a minute, they spent fucking 6 hours a week watching that? That's billions of dollars in fucking advertising space. Yeah.
Because shit, I have sat there and watched hours and hours of Dan Bell just walking around
we put those
empty malls.
YouTube put those bitches under, though. That model no longer exists. We got about probably 3 minutes.
Yeah, we'll go in a minute.
Okay.
But yeah, so like I said, I think that I think it's the same, a little bit of the same feeling that you see with urban exploration, where and particularly when people find abandoned houses where all the shit is still there.
Especially if it's a mansion. That's weird.
Yeah, like when you showed me that one that was a mansion, that it's like, obviously it looks kind of fucked up because it's been abandoned for a while, but it was surprisingly intact. And a lot of the people's shit was still there, like clothes and toys. And so I'm thinking to myself, and I think a lot of people think this, why it's creepy and fascinating, it's just like, what the fuck, what was the situation that happened that cause them to just leave all their shit here
They
like
lose
this.
all their money. They can't afford the
I
place,
guess, but
and
it's like you'd think that they would at least take some of their things.
Well, they sometimes they have the stories. Sometimes they know. Dude loses all his money. Wife divorces him. She takes everything. They no longer have enough money to move a lot of that shit out of the fucking apartment.
Right.
And what do they want with all that fucking furniture? They can't move it to a smaller house
Right.
where they're going.
But even the clothes and toys and stuff.
That was kind of like their old clothes.
Yeah, I guess.
Their newer
But still,
clothes they took.
super
And then
weird.
you know the kids had outgrown those toys, so they left them. They didn't want to spend thousands and thousands of dollars of moving all that shit into a little bitty house. And it was more than one house because a lot of times the family's breaking up. The kid doesn't live with them anymore. The kid's grown now.
Maybe
that
that's
kind of
what
stuff.
it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's kind of whole because honestly, I really like, well, in a way that kind of creeps me out. There's kind of a whole subgenre too of like stock photos, which I really like, of just like photographs of like empty rooms, like especially ones that are sort of like retro, like the one that I used for the thumbnail, which is just like kind of like a retro TV and like a lamp, but then there's like nobody in there,
Yeah.
and it's, I don't know, it's just like really hard to explain like why that's so creepy. There's nothing inherently creepy about like an empty room, obviously, but obviously there is because a lot of people think that, and that's why that's why it's used so much in, particularly nowadays, like in in Backrooms, and Skinamarink use that a lot, like looking at like empty corners and shit like that. It's just fucking creepy, you know what I mean?
Yep. Okay, we're out.
All right, so we are gonna go out, so
Yeah.
we have to sign off for the evening. I think we mostly stayed on topic. That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a nice little show.
we stayed on topic more than we usually do.
Yeah, we
But
gotta
yeah,
go though.
but yeah, we really have to get going, get down there, and have our Thanksgiving Eve goth party. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the show. If you're just arriving now, obviously, really sorry, but we have to sign off. So hopefully you can watch it recorded later on. As I said, please remember to click on the Skillshare link in the bottom, get 50% off of a monthly or an annual subscription. It's down in the description box if you would. So we will see you guys again on Friday night for the Sidetrack show. Please have a happy Thanksgiving if you are in the United States or if you're celebrating it elsewhere, and we will see you guys again on Friday. Good night.